Okay, I got 6 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order of the Common Council for Tuesday, September 28th. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item C is public comment, period. At this time, the council president will recognize members of the public who have indicated a desire to address the council. Upon recognition by the council president, persons may address the council, first stating their name and address. The council may act on emergency matters introduced by members of the public. Dale, I think you're up first.
Dale Christensen, I'm the executive director of Central Wisconsin State Fair at 513 East 17th Street in Marshfield. And I thought I would come tonight to just give a little brief update as to how the fair has been going. At our last Fair Commission meeting, it was brought to my attention that it might be nice that if someone from the fair would come, let the city know how things are going. After not having a fair in 2020 and weathering through that, we were quite excited for this year's fair. And Mother Nature had different plans for us. And as we are getting into things and we're winding down, I do not have complete reports yet, but overall, the health of this year's fair went very, very well. Our ride gross was higher than it was in 2019, so the fair's percentage was up. Our food vendors, the percentage was up. Our attendance was pretty close to right where we were in 2019, being the total washouts that we had on Tuesday night, or Tuesday and Tuesday evening, and then again on Friday. I think we'll all remember Friday. Just to give you kind of a brief update as to what we went through is with the couple of inches that we received on Tuesday, I did have to have Brad Doyne come in on Wednesday morning. We scraped, I would say, 4 inches of slop off of the track and out from in front of the grandstand. And we did put down 2 loads of bark, which seemed to save our grandstand shows. Our Wednesday night show went very well, was well attended. The market animal sale on Wednesday night, I think they set records as to attendance with their new setup and also with numbers that came in. The parking lots and everything were in very bad shape right away on Tuesday and Wednesday. Then Friday came along. Thursday's night show went very, very well. The Hairball Band was very well attended. Show went very well. Friday was another story. We had rain and we had people stuck in all our parking lots, and we had to address that problem. So Friday evening, I went out, and Friday afternoon looking for alternative parking areas. I would like to thank the American Legion. I'd like to thank Valley Bank and Wheelers for the use of their parking lots. And we had to set up some emergency parking situations because on Friday evening, we closed all the lots. It did not keep everybody out of them, but we had them gated and was hoping that people wouldn't get in there and make a mess that they did make. Our Friday night show, our headliner, Jordan Davis, he played for about a half an hour when we had to cancel the show. He waited backstage till the weather broke, and I've never seen anything like it. He did come out with his acoustic guitar, sat on the edge of the stage and played for whomever was willing to stand there in the rain and listen. And when the lightning came, we cleared the place out and moved forward with that. Getting the buses out of there down in the grandstand area at 1 o'clock in the morning was quite a challenge. And we were able to get them out and on their road. Then on Saturday, we had all parking lots closed. We went to a shuttle service, and attendance on Saturday was very good. And attendance on Sunday was also very good. So that's kind of where we were. I think this year's fair, we can mark it up as a success. Right now, I've got 95% of the bills are paid. We did start writing premium checks today for all exhibitors. That's going to come to $20,000. And when that gets paid, we will be in very good shape. So that kind of sums up this year's fair. Some of the other things we've been doing is, since the middle of June, there's been large events about every other week at the fairgrounds. Starting with a horse show, we had the National Snowmobile Show, we had the fair. 2 weeks later, we had the Trappers. We had the bull ride has come in this week. We've got 3 smaller events going on there this weekend, and coming up on next weekend will be the Fall Demolition Derby. So the fairgrounds are being used. As far as where we are with fixing up all of our mud, I'm going to kind of backtrack. We've kind of focused our attention right now on everything on the west side of Peach Street. And the majority of all of that has been worked up and been seeded and is getting back into shape. We've got some work to do on the west side of Peach. As of right now, I think we've got about $12,000 stuck into groundwork, which is an expense that we weren't anticipating, but it's moving forward. So the other thing that I just would like to bring up is that if you were at the fair this year, we did have several projects with improvements. All picnic tables, benches have been repaired and painted. We do have a project going on that's in between the grandstand and the fair office, where we've cleaned up that area, and it's our youth foundation wall, and that money raised from that wall is going to help offset the fair's loan payments. So that's kind of where we're at. Several projects that we need to get done. I'd just like to bring it to the board's attention. The round barn windows are in very, very bad shape. A lot of the window sills are falling off, and we're going to have to find a way to come up with funding to take care of the round barn. Other than that, I just want to say thank you for your time, and anybody has any questions, you can stop up and see me. I'm always glad to talk about the fair. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. We really can't do much about the weather, but it sounds like you've got a lot of stuff going on out there. Matt, I think you had your hand up.
Thank you. Matt McLean, 1206 Fairview Drive, and I'm the Executive Director of Visit Marshfield. I think Mother Nature smiled on us a little more than Dale. Saturday at Maple Fall Fest, just recently here, was the busiest day ever. I had multiple vendors tell me they've sold the most products they've ever sold at Maple Fall Fest or any trade show. Many of them ran out of stuff, and then they just took orders on Sunday. And same with the food vendors, ran out of food and a lot. So Saturday was amazing. The weather was perfect. Also, I do want to, Dale has done a great job this season at the fairgrounds, been really involved with some of the events that Dale is working on, especially the snowmobile show, the Trappers show, and of course of marketing the fair. And so I think that Saturday, that the Bull Ride show was the same day as Maple Fall Fest, and also the Blue Heron Brew Pub hosted an Oktoberfest. So I knew some people that came, spent the day at Fall Fest, went to the Bull Ride, and then had beers at Oktoberfest after. And the new owner, Justin, of the Blue Heron Brew Pub told me that was his best day of business ever. So excited to hear that. And then also the 150 plus vendors we had, many of them local, support small businesses. So that's a brief update on Maple Fall Fest. Also just wanted to let you know we're starting our 2022 visitor guide. So that's in the works, and we're working with many partners to make that good. We're going to be featuring the 150th anniversary, of course. A couple of the other groups that really benefited from Maple Fall Fest were the Columbus School Cheer and Football ran our breakfast. They did a really great job, served over 1,500 people and exceeded their fundraising expectations. Also, the Lions Club, Master Gardeners, and American Legion had their best years ever, making money to return to the community. And then the revenues that we generated from booth sales for Maple Fall Fest would go back to sponsoring baseball tournaments, hockey tournaments, baseball, basketball, the Central Wisconsin State Fair, Dairy Fest, Subsidy Days, the Bull Ride, as well as events at Winslow Family Plaza. And I do have to give Parks and Rec a thanks for help at Fall Fest. Thanks, Justin. I did want to also talk about, as we're on the agenda, item S, the update discussion on request to look at the possible creation of a tourism commission. We kind of started this discussion was about a year and a half ago, Steve. And so I've been talking with Steve, Economic Development Board, Josh Miller, as well as some council members. Mike Fire is on our board of directors, and talked with Ed Wagner. So we kind of struck that conversation back up and really kind of found out that the Economic Development Board and Visit Marshfield have a lot of common goals. We're working on a lot of projects together. We're kind of coming together, so we're kind of make sure we're all on the same page relating economic development activities and tourism. It really came up that a tourism commission would be a duplication of efforts, as we have a very strong board of directors already. I want to thank Al Cheney and Gary coming, and Mike, I guess you have to come here, but you're here as well. So those are three of my board members that are here. And we're proud to be the tourism entity for Marshfield. We led record visitor growth in 2018 and 19. More revenue coming in for room taxes for the city and really everybody. And really just trying to lead through the pandemic here. We're seeing some positive signs. Hotels are starting to get fuller. They're still not anywhere near the records of 18, 19. Still looking about 20 or 30% down. But we're trying to be optimistic and working with our partners for that. So that's really all I have. Be happy to entertain any questions now or later. I'll stick around for. So thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Matt. A lot of stuff going on here. Yes, sir. Yes.
My name is Jeff Shale. I live at 514 West 6th Street in Marshfield here. I'd like to make a comment or two about the data that was used last week to justify the change in City Hall hours. I have some background in statistics, and what I can tell you is that a statistician would tell you that that data was manipulated. I'm not pointing any fingers at Steve or anyone else. I don't know what his background is, but you can't post on the city website, in the city paper, on the City Hall doors that you're going to be closed on Friday, and then collect that data and say, look, we didn't have anybody show up. That just, that does not compute. You cannot do that from a statistical standpoint. What should have been done is that you should have collected what they call normative data, and that would have been collecting data from Monday through Friday, your normal work hours, including lunch hours, and seeing how much traffic you had on each one of those days, and then analyze that data and see what you had. If that data would have shown that you were extremely slow on Saturday or on Friday afternoon, and that your Monday through Thursdays lunches were so busy that you had to have extra staff, there would have been some justification to make the decision that you made. And I guess, and the other thing I want to go over is that there's another thing in statistics that's called sample size, and there was no way enough data was collected there to make the assumptions that were made, even if they had been correct. And especially to extrapolate it out to the entire year. I heard repeatedly that summer hours are different, and so data should have been collected on the rest of the year if you were going to extrapolate that out to the entire year. And like I said, Steve, I'm not pointing fingers at you. I mean, I don't know if someone helped you design that, but it wasn't done correctly. I guess I got a couple other things. I said, I did a little bit of my own polling in town, and as I'm an old fart, my polling was probably more tilted toward people of my age group. So what I want to say is that this sample size that I have is also not large enough to draw a hard conclusion. But what I got for responses from, I probably talked to, probably roughly 10 different folks. Initially, they thought, well, we're at least gaining some money by not spending, if they're going to be paid for 36 hours. When I told them that wasn't the case, that they were going to be working through their lunch hour and getting paid for it, the responses changed. And I'm just going to read them to you. Again, not necessarily my views, but views of some of your constituents. I got a yeah, right. So they're going to eat. They're going to go all day without eating. Another person asked if that was even legal from a labor law standpoint. Because I know when I worked at the hospital, we got in all sorts of trouble if we, didn't get our lunches. And another person looked at it as same cost, but less service. He said, leave it the way it is. Some of the other responses that I got, I actually had a couple of people that said expand the hours in AM and the PM so that folks that work 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 can get to City Hall. And that drew some positive feedback. There was some kind of negative stuff. You talked on City Hall being in its own glass bubble. I had people that said, typical City Hall taking care of City Hall. Some people looked at it strictly from a work standpoint. I had one gentleman who told me, he said, it looks to me like you're getting Friday off, every Friday afternoon off, without having to take vacation. And I think there was one more. And then I had someone question as to what is going on Friday afternoon. I said, is it my understanding that Friday afternoons during the summer hours are such that all 20, 30 people in City Hall, how many there are just sitting there waiting for phone calls or for somebody to come knock on the door and say, I need some help. And if that's not the case, then they question whether or not, one, if there needed to be any hours, and if there wasn't a significant need over the lunch hour, why we weren't cutting these down to what, in the hospital where I worked, they would have called it a 0.9 position. You would have got paid for 36 hours. Again, not mine, Steve. And I said, and it's a small sample. So I said, I can't go and say, mine is right, yours is wrong. I can't do that. I also heard, I guess the bottom line is I said there wasn't a lot of support for what was done. I heard at the last meeting that we needed to do this to kind of keep up with other cities. I decided to do some phone calls. I called Wausau. Wausau told me they had discussed summer hours, and I guess it actually went to a vote. The City Hall employees were willing to work longer hours to make up for that Friday afternoon, but it got voted down. In Stevens Point and Wisconsin Rapids, Stevens Point hadn't even discussed it. Wisconsin Rapids had, and it went nowhere. It never didn't sound like it got to the council. Both of those cities, all three of those cities work, let me see here. Wausau works 8 to 4:30. Point works 7:30 to 4. Rapids works 8 to 4:30. They take half-hour lunches and then they stagger them so that there's always still somebody there. And they haven't had the need to overstaff on the noon hours. I guess in closing, I guess the other thing we heard a lot about communication last time. Many people were displeased with being no communication before this was enacted. And I also heard, I believe it was Mr. Witzel, talk about the need to get that information right in front of their noses. I agree with that. I mean, I'm sure, it's easy for people to do nothing, wait until somebody does something and then complain. I said that's kind of human nature. But I said, I think he was 100% right in saying we need to get that in front of them. And I guess to start, I said the first thing you need to do is you got to get accurate data. And you can't feed the public false data and then make an assumption on it. It's just, that won't hold water. Scientifically, it won't hold water. My suggestion, get accurate data. Then we got to get the info in front of the people. We talked about town halls. I don't know if that's feasible. What about using the same tools that Steve used to start out with? The website, Hub City News, postings on the doors, whatever it takes to get people knowing what you're considering. After you've collected the data, give them the data, and then say, now give us your input. And if they don't, then it's our fault. Then it's the public's fault. Then they're leaving it in your hands. But I really just don't think that we made an effort along those lines. So that's all I had to say. Has anybody got any questions for me?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you much.
Anyone else wish to address the council? Go ahead, Chris.
I'm Chris Howard, 402 West Park Street. When I decided to speak today, I didn't realize how nervous I was going to be. But last time I was here, I think Mr. Whistle's beard was about 4 inches shorter, so it's been a little while. A little darker too, yes. But anyway, with that in mind, I did bring a cheat sheet, so forgive me, and if I seem a little nervous, that's why. I want to start by thanking each and every member of the council for the job that you do. You have the courage to make tough decisions, knowing that no matter how you vote on whatever topic, you'll be criticized and second-guessed by some very passionate voices. I can't imagine the pressure you're under every Tuesday. Very few people from the community show up to these meetings to offer input, but we all love to whine and complain after the decisions have been made. Does that sound familiar to anybody? I'm guilty of this too. In fact, I am here tonight to comment on a topic that was discussed and voted upon last week. The topic was just the latest example that indicates to me that the relationship between the city and the Marshfield Clinic is stressed right now. I'm not here to weigh in on the details or to take sides. I'm here to remind everyone that the city of Marshfield depends on a strong, productive relationship with the Marshfield Clinic. Also, the success of the Marshfield Clinic depends on a strong, productive relationship with the city of Marshfield. You need each other. And as a community, we are counting on the city and the clinic to work together productively and cooperatively for the good of Marshfield. Right now, there seems to be hurt feelings on both sides. When decisions and negotiations are being made with high emotions, the disagreements seem bigger than they actually are. Please be careful as you proceed and recognize the importance of your decisions and the potential long-term implications. If the challenges facing the city and the clinic have to be solved in a courtroom, it won't matter who is declared the winner. The relationship will be forever damaged. You will both lose, and so will this community. But it doesn't have to be this way. The city and the clinic can continue to work together for the good of our community as they have for 100 years. You have so many of the same goals. Obviously, the city wants the community to grow and prosper. If the clinic is like other organizations today, and I know they are, they desperately need more employees right now. Isn't it easier to attract employees to a city that is growing and prospering? Wouldn't the clinic be willing to help in that effort? There's so much common ground here. We have a good thing going here in Marshfield, and we can't take it for granted. This community is counting on the clinic and the city to solve any challenges like business people. Work together, create win-wins, sit down and talk, eliminate misunderstandings, order some beer and chicken wings, shake hands, high five, and congratulate each other for helping this community thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Is there anyone else who wishes to address the council? Aaron? I see you don't have notes.
I might get a little, I might get a little emotional here. Are you Lance? No, you look like Lance Plimmel, sorry. Lance actually I grew up in Wisconsin Rapids, and so that's how I know Lance. My house was directly behind him, actually. Chris said it really good. And, when I look at everybody on council and I look at people in this room, I feel like I know pretty much everyone except for maybe 5 people. I've sat and had coffee with some of you. I've had dinner with some of you. I've had business meetings with some of you. And I feel like we all have the same goal in mind. And that's how can we not only bring people to Marshfield, but keep them here. And I'll be honest, Chris and I, we moved here 12 years ago. We didn't know a soul. We didn't know anybody who lived here. And we had just, I think, 1 property at the time. And the thing that I genuinely love about Marshfield is it's a community that everyone works together. So it breaks my heart to see the 2 biggest players not be able to work together. And I'm asking everybody, we're not picking sides. I'm not going to do that. That's why you've never seen me run to be on council. That's why I've never considered running for anything. Because Chris and I like to create win-win situations, and we're just not good at politics. But you guys are. You guys are. You guys have a hard job. And I give every single one of you credit, because there is no way I could do what you guys do. No way. Because at the end of the day, we're all going to go home. We set our share, and then you guys have to live with the decisions that you make. And then people have to answer to you, or you have to answer to them. And I'm pleading with you guys, and Chris is pleading with you guys, to let's not be that community that just falls into the stigma of all communities where they don't get along with players. Let's put our pride aside. Let's put our egos aside. Let's be open, hear each other out, and make it a win-win for everybody. Because the clinic has 6,100 people who are employed alone. That's not including the families. Okay, that's a lot. And that is actually one of our biggest motivators and the things that we use when we promote people to come to the area. Because I don't like to call them competitors, because I think Central Wisconsin is our friends, Wausau, Stevens Point, Rapids. But my husband and I were trying to decide between all those cities where to move. And we chose Marshfield because of the clinic, because of the downtown. And what I knew of the Marshfield was the Nightmare and Reflections and the clinic. Well, in the last 12 years, there's been a lot that has happened, right? We have the community center, the YMCA, the library. We have the pool. With a lot of these people like Justin and Matt and Al and Rita and Josh Miller, wherever you are, there's a lot of people, Ed Wagner, there's a lot of people, you guys we work together, and it just does not look good to outside communities when we are divided. And when I have to recruit a restaurant to come to this area and open up a second location or want to consider this area, I guarantee you they're going to ask me the one question Chris and I get asked all the time, and that is, how well does the city work with you? That's the number one question we get. And for 12 years, I have been able to say they work amazing. They ask us questions, they make us feel like we have a seat at the table. And I truly believe that we can still do that with one another. We can. So I think that there are, and I don't have to know the details, I don't have to understand the logistics, because like Chris said, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who wins, because the outside communities and outside people who want to move to the area and open up a business and work here, they're going to just see as that community doesn't get along, so let's go elsewhere. I don't want that. And I know deep down you don't want that. So I know right now I'm just speaking as a community, you know, a mother of three, you know, and someone who is probably going to go have chicken wings and beer with my husband afterwards. Anyone can join us when we're done if you want. But at the end of the day, all of us, people from the clinic, people from the city, all of you, we share the same restaurants, we go to the same stores, we even have children that go to the same activities. And we have a small town and everyone knows everybody. And let's get past this. Let's make it right. Get on the news for a good reason. Wow, what did Marshfield do? Look at how conflicted they were, and they came and they created a win-win. What did they do? And let's do that. Let's be the leader. Our country is so divided on so many different topics, and I'm not going to get into them. Let's not fall into that stigma of being divided. Let's work together, okay? I'm begging you guys, please. And if you can utilize me in any way, I don't care. I don't know what I can do, but I am willing to work with anyone who is willing to just create a win-win. Please, let's not be divided. I'm begging you guys, please. Okay? So I wish I could share with you a project that we're working on. Today, actually, got asked by 3 different people when we were out on coffee, what's your next project? And we have a lot of ideas, and a lot of them actually include the city and the clinic with the downtown. And I would love to come here on another Tuesday and share what those ideas are. And I have shared confidently with some of you what some of those ideas are. And I trust that you will believe in the potential of Marshfield so we can all make it work and really work with Matt and create a tourism bigger and better than ever before. Because I really believe with us being in the center of the state, we can really use that to our advantage. Thank you guys. And if you have any questions, you can let me know.
Thank you, Erin. I am tempted to adjourn the meeting and go for beer and wings, but I suppose we better continue on here. Anyone else wish to address the council? Anyone else? See no one. We'll move on to item D, approval of the minutes of the September 14th, 2021 regular meeting and the September 21st, 2021 special meeting. And we have a motion from Mr. Fire and a second from Mr. Butke. Is there any discussion? If not, please vote. And that motion carries unanimously. Item E is staff updates. First up is an introduction of Jennifer Solinsky from Accounting Manager by Ron Allman, Finance Director.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce Jennifer Solinsky. She's our new accounting manager. She started last week. She joins us from the city of Fort Collins, Colorado, where she worked in their accounting department and worked on debt service, general fund, capital projects, a lot of the things we're working on. She's also a recent expert in the Marshfield housing market that we talk about quite a bit, and a CPA and working on getting that renewed in Wisconsin. So welcome, Jennifer, and looking forward to working with her.
Number 2 is introduction of Dylan Cook, Jacob Bowman, and Zachary Weber, firefighter paramedics by Scott Owen, Fire Chief.
All right, good evening. Happy to introduce our newest firefighters. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail.
One, they're dressed a lot better than I am right now. We're going to start with Jacob Bowman. Jacob, actually, all three are local in the area. Jacob, it's Facebook official. He's the cutest fireman that we have. Next is, you didn't think you were going to get away from that, did you?
I actually did tonight.
Yeah, no. Then we have Dylan Cook. Dylan came to us from Safer and is also with Spencer. And then down on the end is Zach Weber, also from the Auburndale area, and came to us from Nakusa. And he moved here for unknown reasons from Las Vegas. So anyway, these are our three new firefighter medics.
Thank you, Chief, and welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Uh,
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm on the horse.
We'll let Tom Turchi go first.
All right, just a quick correction when it comes to the Board of Public Works minutes. We have Quentin Rosenditch noted as excused, but he was at the meeting because he made several of the motions. So I just want to make sure that gets noted in our minutes for the Board of Public Works. Thanks.
Okay.
I'll give it to you now, Steve.
Now, Mr. Bart.
No apology needed, Tom. If I was at a meeting, I'd want credit for it too, so that's good. And also, welcome to all the new employees. It's a great thing to be able to have these meetings begin with welcoming new staff to the city. Good to have them with us. I'm here just to announce the start of the hours, the new hours on Friday from 7:30 to noon. And I'm working with the Communications Director, Tom Laux, to get the publicity out on all our various platforms, whether it be social media, website, traditional media, cable TV, anywhere we can, so that the public becomes aware of it. We're doing signage, we're doing everything we can, internally as well, in terms of on our emails and voicemails to let people know what's going on. I do want to comment about Mr. Shields' concerns, and I do respect you and your concerns totally. You made some points worth discussing. I do want to clarify, though, that when I came to the meeting 2 weeks ago, I didn't come with the intention of talking to the council about year-round hours on Fridays. I think you were here. I brought simply as an update report of the experience from August, from those 4 Fridays. So that's really all I was doing, and the council took it from there and extended that. Truthfully, the data that you heard me give that night was just pure raw data from our cameras that were tracking people coming to the front door and the phone calls that we received. I'm not calling that scientific. Believe me, I never represented it to be a scientific study. But it was not manipulated, it just simply was the records that came from our cameras and our phone logs. And I'm not going to disagree with you that you could make the argument that to do more than that would perhaps need or suggest a greater study. Like I said, I didn't come here that night to make an argument for year-round. In fact, I didn't come here that night to make an argument for the summer of 2022. I just came to give a report. So I just want to clarify that. That's why you didn't see greater science, greater analysis of data. That wasn't my point. It was just to give us what we saw in 4 weeks' time. And it wasn't intended to be used as a basis for future decisions. I just wanted to clarify that. Like I said, I do respect you and what you had to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Item F is Council President's comments. We have an employee recognition of Jeff Moulter, Facilities Management, who started on 10/10 of 2011 and has been here 10 years. And I don't think he's here tonight. Congratulations to Jeff. And I want to remind everyone that the deadline for clearing decorations and such from the cemetery is coming up on Friday, October 1st. Obviously, we're probably not going to go out there on Saturday and do anything about it. So if you need the weekend to clear up your things from the cemetery, please do so. But be aware that deadline is coming. And we hope that you can get that taken care of this week. I don't have anything further. Item G is council comments. Are there any comments from the council? I don't see any. Item H is reports from commissions, boards, and committees. Do we have any reports from commissions, boards, or committees? Seeing none. Item I is the consent agenda. That's listed in your agenda. And I'll entertain a motion to approve. Motion by Mr. Fisher and a second by Mr. Fire. Is there any discussion on that? Any items to be removed? Seeing none, please vote. And that motion carries. There were no items removed from the consent agenda. Item K is election of a member for the 5-year term on the Utility Commission. The candidates are Mike Ebrel and Jeff Scheel. You have a ballot before you, and I guess we'll just fill out the ballot. And Deborah, you gonna click those?
You need a nomination first.
Oh, okay, we need a nomination first. Mr. Butke has his button pushed.
As always, I make a motion to nominate both candidates.
And a second by Mrs. Spiros. Okay, now we can vote.
Vote on the closing. Let's close the nomination.
Okay,
Vote to close the nomination.
vote to close the nominations, so please vote. Mr. Wagner, thank you. So the nominations are closed. Now you can use the ballot that you should be at your desk to vote, and Deb will collect those. Oh, thank you. Mr. Witzel, will you count the ballots with that? Oh, sure. To verify? And Mr. Ebrel wins that, or is selected. Oh, leave that back. I don't need to do anything more with that, right? No. Okay. Item L, presentation on a proposed development project by I-State located in TIF District Number 11, introduced by Josh Miller, Development Services Director.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. As we've talked a lot about, talking about good, exciting things that are coming to Marshfield or happening for Marshfield. It's with my pleasure to introduce Gary Tupi with I-State. He's going to talk a little bit about their upcoming project. A lot of times we, can't talk about things, disclose things to the public at this stage, but they were willing to share their project with the city. So with that, I turn it over to Gary, and you can tell the council about your project.
I'm Gary Tupi, representative for the interstate companies here in town. I appreciate a few short minutes. I know your meeting's probably running longer than anticipated, so I'll try to keep it short. We are currently under contract with property. I don't know how up to speed you are on what we're doing with Marty Draxler on the edge of town with the help of Rita. And coming to Marshfield as an outsider in, and we do this all across the country. So for interstate companies, I'm the real estate guy we have a project in Missoula, Montana, Indiana, South Dakota. We're all over this country. And I would tell you that your staff here is second to none. Every time that we've tried to interface with your staff, immediate response, very easy to get meetings scheduled, just excellent communication. It has been a wonderful experience working in Marshfield. So thank you very much for that. Tonight, we're not looking for any approvals, of course. We're way on the early stages of trying to get this over the goalpost here. I guess what I'm looking for from the council tonight in a broad stroke is any open questions, as we're just about now to secure the closing on the property and move forward and start programming the building and really start investing some serious money into building a new state-of-the-art facility for Interstate in Marshfield. I guess I'm looking from the council if you see any roadblocks that we need to overcome before we get to that next step. To give you just a little bit of insight of what we're doing at Interstate and why the new facility is so important. Right now, we currently have about 100 to 105 employees at the current facility between the truck sales division and then the uprating portion of the company. We've just purchased a large company in Arizona with Southwest Products, which is another piece that we plan on expanding our Marshfield facility. It's lube trucks, tank trucks, in addition to flatbeds and cranes and logging cranes and et cetera. So some really exciting things. We are trying for a 5-year plan with a 30% growth. We definitely bring better jobs than you see a lot of the big box type stores with basic wages. Our people are professional and very well cared for, and it's a good 100+ jobs that we're trying to grow by 30% in Marshfield. So in that facility, we will be leading cutting edge as the Western Star Freightliner brand and a lot of other ancillary products that we do. In the next 10 years, you're going to see a lot of technology come into the trucking world in electric trucks and environmental things that are coming into the industry that facility will be piloting and educating for the whole greater 5-state area. So it's going to be kind of an exciting facility as we get programming that building over the winter. So with that, I would open any questions or comments that you have on the facility. We're looking to draw information tonight so we can go back and feel comfortable that when we come back to Marshfield with plans that the council is up to speed on what's going on and everybody, at least in the broad stroke, sees this as a good thing for the community.
Does anyone have any questions? I guess my first question would be, are you willing to share where you're planning to locate?
Yeah, so Marty Draxler on the edge of town there, the truck shop. We have 15 acres under contract with Marty that we are trying to get through the process. Soil borings have been complete. Environmental studies have been complete. We're working out some wetland issues that we're trying to get resolved this week. That's really the last hurdle we have to getting over the goalpost and taking ownership. It's kind of interesting as we go across the country acquiring property and doing what we do. It's rare that the buyer and the seller have the relationship that we've ended up getting with Marty. I mean, like, I would have him over for Christmas dinner. These people are phenomenal and have been really, really great people to get to know. And so I can't even say enough good about the relationship we have there. And we're very excited to be in that location and very excited to work with Marty and his dad. So it's been fabulous.
Okay. Mr. Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, welcome to Marshfield. The development department is great. They like to work with you. If there's anything that needs to be done, I'm sure they'll tell us beforehand, and we can work things out. This is your kind of operation. Is exactly the kind we expected to see come to that area, and would like to welcome you as a neighbor.
Thank you.
Mr. Butke.
Thank you. Is that in addition to where you are now?
There's going to be a majority of what we're doing will be a relocation. We don't own the facility that we have. That's currently under lease. We don't know exactly what and how that will all phase. So that's being negotiated between the owner of the old V&H store and then us logistically moving. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments?
One other comment maybe to make that I think is beneficial to the city is, we come paying our own freight. We're not coming as some businesses that are looking for, grandma on Main Street to think that they're funding development that's, doesn't benefit them. So we're not coming to the city looking for all kinds of incentives. We'll pay our own way. We're a privately owned company we're very, very committed to the communities that we do business in. And so we hope that we can continue to be an asset and grow the employment and carry our own water. So
great. We look forward to seeing things on the southeast corner.
That's what I was looking for.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item M, Presentation and review of city employee benefits presented by Jen Rakey, Human Resources Director. Jen.
There we go. There we are. Thank you. Sorry for the delay. So the reason I'm here tonight is I wanted to provide you with a benefits overview of our current benefit program. As you know, annual enrollment is going to be coming up fairly soon, and it's in our best interest and your best interest to make sure that you currently have a good refresher on where our benefit programs sit as of today. So the three things that I want to do today is just go through our employee benefits, and it won't be excessive, but I want to make sure that you have a good understanding. Two, I want to do a general review. We always hear, how do our benefits compare to others, both public and private? So we've got some general information in regard to our health insurance and how that works. And then third, go through the status of our benefit elections currently for our staff. So when you look at our benefit package, I know I included in the packet a summary of what we provide to our new hires upon hire, and then tonight I've provided you all with a copy of the presentation in case there are questions as we go. So to start out, we have two health insurance plans, one being the Premier plan and one being the Simply One plan, a vision hardware plan that's a rider to our health insurance, dental coverage, dependent care flexible spending accounts, long-term disability, life insurance, a PEP plan, a 457B deferred comp plan, our retirement plan, and then obviously the contribution that you make to our health savings account each year. So if you look at our current health plan, as I mentioned, we have two plans in place. And what you'll notice first is the fact that these two plans mirror each other. What you'll find is both plans have the same deductible and out-of-pocket maximum. The deductible is $3,000 for a single plan and $6,000 for a family. Important to note that it has a embedded deductible in the family plan, which means that no one person on the plan is going to accrue more than that $3,000 deductible before their coinsurance kicks in. In terms of out-of-pocket maximum, again, they match $4,500 for a single, $9,000 for a family. Our coinsurance rate is a 90-10 split, which means once that deductible is met, the employee pays 10% and the plan pays 90% of that premium until they reach the out-of-pocket maximum. When you look at our pharmacy benefit, that's also subject to deductible and coinsurance. So what would happen in that case is you would meet the $3,000 deductible before you would have prescription coverage by the plan, and then a copay would kick in 20, 40, 60, or 25% of that premium. Now, the difference between the two plans is really the network that they're in. So if you look at the Premier plan, you can see that there's a number of networks in it, so a broad spectrum, whether that's Marshfield Clinic, Aspirus, Ascension, which was the northern region, that's now Marshfield Clinic, Ascension, Mayo, Oakleaf, Previa, UW Health, and others. And in the Simply One plan, it's a narrow network plan. What that means is that all services are provided by the Marshfield Clinic are covered in network, so it could be their hospitals or clinics. If you look at our premiums, what you'll see is that we've got an 85-15 split. What that means is that the plan, the city actually pays 85% of the premium for the plan, and the employee pays the other 15%. As I mentioned, we do have a vision rider. That 85-15 split applies to that plan as well. And just so you know, as we're looking at eligibility, in order to be eligible for the plan, you do have to be a 0.75 FTE or working 30 hours a week as a regularly scheduled employee. We also have a Delta dental plan. It looks, based on the slide, like we have two separate plans, but we don't. It is one plan. You fall in one network or the other based on the provider that you choose. So if you look at these two plans, you'll see that all preventative services are covered at 100% on either plan. Basic services are covered at 100% versus 90% if you have a PPO provider. Major services, caps, crowns, dentures, bridges, those are covered at 70% versus 50% if you find a PPO provider. And then orthodontia has a higher limit. It's $3,000 for for a lifetime maximum for a PPO provider and $2,000 for a premier provider. Rates are also listed there. For most employees, it's an 85-15 split, so the employee pays 15%, with the exception of our represented police and fire. They pay 100% for dental coverage. Next, our health savings account. As you know, you have generously provided a contribution for our employees each year. For a single plan, it's $600 and $1,200 for a family plan. That goes towards those deductibles that are fairly high. And then you can also see that there is an ability for an employee to contribute to this plan pre-tax dollar as well. They can contribute up to $3,600 for a single and $7,200 for a family plan. We do offer life insurance that is through employer trust funds, same company that handles our retirement plan. For city employees, the city pays 1 times their annual earnings, or actually it's the prior year WRS earnings, but they pay 1 time in basic coverage for most of our employees. For our represented police officers, the city pays $7,500 of the first section of basic coverage, and for firefighters, it's 50% of the first $10,000 for basic. There is an ability for our employees to select additional life insurance. It's up to 5 times their annual salary, and then also coverage for a spouse and dependent, different levels. Anything above the basic life insurance for most of our employees, that is where the basic is provided, the rest is paid for by the employee. And then the Wisconsin Retirement Program. This is probably our best benefit. Our employee contribution every pay period is 6.75% of their earnings. The city also matches that at 6.75%. For police officers, they contribute 6.75%, and then they have a little higher city contribution as it covers some additional expenses for things like duty disability. Our fire department actually falls in that same category of protective services. However, they don't have Social Security coming out of their checks, so they contribute 6.75%, and the city contributes 16.35% of their earnings into the account. We do have a number of other optional employee-paid programs, the first being long-term disability. Long-term disability is offered to all of our employees with the exception of our represented police and fire employees. What that does is provide 60% of an employee's earnings for up to 5 years if they have a non-work-related injury or illness that would keep them out of work for more than 90 days. Employees fully fund this program, and the city doesn't have any administrative cost for it. For the dependent care flexible spending accounts, that is only for dependent daycare purposes. It is a use it or lose it type of fund. Employees can have money deducted from their paycheck pre-tax dollar to put aside for these expenses. And the city does pay a small administrative fee for this, about $50 a month for participation. Deferred comp, this is our 457 deferred compensation program. What this is really the government version of a 401k. So there's slightly different rules, but it works the same. There is no government match or city match for that based on the fact that we do offer the pension program. So as I talked, I often hear, how do our benefits compare to others? And so what we did is we were able to work with M3 and get information from their book of business to understand how their both public and private sector clients match with ours. Now keep in mind this information that we were able to get from them was from 2019, but I did put it into a format so that we can compare it to some of our current statuses. So this first slide that you see is really our health plan comparison and what our premiums are. So if you look at our current health plan, if you look at a cost for our premier plan, it's about $2,000 a month if I'm talking in round numbers. So slightly higher than what you see on this slide is the highest amount. For our Simply One plan, it's about $1,700 a month. The red line that you see on the slide shows what our premium was in 2019, so $1,884 per month. And if you look at the far column to the left, what that is M3's book of business of public sector employees in the Wausau region. The next group over is public employees in Wisconsin that are clients of M3. The third is private sector clients in the Wausau region. And the fourth column is private sector clients from M3. So as you can see, public sector in the region does pay quite a bit more. We're comparable, we're not quite at the top, but we are certainly above the public employers in Wisconsin and the private employers in the Wausau area. I also took a few moments to look at the plan deductibles to see where we rate. As I mentioned, we have a $3,000 deductible for an employee plan, single plan, $6,000 deductible for family. As you can see in both of these, we are slightly above the highest rate, which is the private sector for Wausau clients. And as we get to the next slide, you'll understand a little bit why. So our deductible, again, is high. And I just want to bring to your attention that we have had a healthcare committee over the last 4 years that we, as we have to make changes to our plan design, we get information from that group to ensure that as we make these decisions that we are taking employee wishes into how they want the plan to look at. So for instance, do we want a higher deductible and a lower monthly premium? Do we want a higher coinsurance rate or a lower coinsurance rate as we look to find where we are? You also might recall over the past few years is that we had been at a very high utilization rate about 5 years ago, and we've been gradually bringing that down year over year, and currently we're sitting well below 100% for the last 2 years. So this next slide has to do with employee premiums. And based on this, the City of Marshfield premiums that we see are current premiums, $126.50 for the Premier plan for a single and $292.38 for a family plan. Those are our current rates. If someone were to choose the Simply One plan, the information or the cost of that plan is lower. So it's $111 for a single and $257 for a family plan under that. But I wanted to use the higher of the two for this example. So if you look again, same categories apply. Public sector for the Wausau region, public sector for Wisconsin, and then the two private sectors. We're sitting pretty well in terms of what the employees pay for premiums. So what we've elected over the last few years is a lower premium and a higher deductible. And then to look at where we sit in terms of our plans today. So we currently have 196 eligible employees, and that does include vacant positions. But of those 196 eligible employees for the benefits that we've talked about today, 156 of them, or 79%, have elected to participate in our health plan. 125 or 63% participate in our dental. Keep in mind that number is probably lower because we do pay 100% for our firefighters and our police officers that are represented. The third column is our flexible spending account for dependent daycare. We currently have 12 individuals enrolled in that for 6%. Disability insurance, again, applies to all non-repped employees, so non-represented police and fire are not eligible, but we have 88 that elect that coverage. And then for our life insurance, the basic coverage, we have 181 of the 196 employees that have elected that. The other question I get is, has the Simply One plan helped us at all in terms of keeping our costs down? And so what I wanted to do is show kind of where that split is. So we've got 56% of employees who are enrolled in the plan that took the Premier plan, the higher cost plan, and 44% that took the Simply One. With that, I'm happy to take any questions that you have.
Any questions for Jen? Good job, Jen. No questions. Thank you.
Good. Next time I'll have the annual enrollment information for you.
Oh, sorry. Mr. Witzel has a question.
I was waiting for somebody to speak up, but nobody did. I had a couple quick questions. You had a slide up about optional life insurance, and are we providing up to 3 times or up to 5 times their annual?
Our life insurance allows up to 5 times an
Yeah, I think your
employee's.
slide said up to 3, and I was confused by that.
Oh, my apologies.
So I
It's
just
up to
wanted
5.
get clarification on that. Also, then on the premium slide, you showed employee full premium, employer cost, employee cost. I'm assuming that's per month?
Per month cost.
Okay.
Correct.
I guess then, I just have one other question. I'm a little surprised. 2 plans, Premium and Simply One. Premium is, pretty vast as to who you can go to. Simply One is very focused. The company that's providing the insurance is essentially the same company that's providing the Simply One. I'm a little surprised that the premiums are so close between the Premier and the Simply One. I guess I would have expected a much higher differential, and I don't know if you had an explanation as to why those premiums came in, because what I'm seeing is a $100 difference for the employee alone versus in slightly less than 150 for the employee plus family.
Sure. So this is our second year with the Simply One. 2021 was our first year. What we're planning to do is offer that plan again next year. In terms of how the difference between the two, the first year when we put the plan in place, there was about a 12% difference. So employees could actually see a reduction in premiums by 3% the first year they enrolled, while the rest of our insurance went up slightly. So it was about a 12% spread between the two plans.
Okay, I'm not sure that answered my question, but okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I don't see any, so thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
Item N is a presentation and request to approve resolution number 2021-56, City of Marshfield Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan, presented by Josh Miller, Development Services Director.
Not seeing my presentation. There we go. Thank you. We started this process back in February of 2020. So we had intentions of getting this done a little bit earlier than we did. And because of the pandemics happened about a month later, we really had to put the pause on this plan. The first component of this plan is really to get public participation. So that kind of went out the window initially. But we're pretty much to the finish line at this point, barring any major changes by the Common Council tonight. This was really a recommendation that stemmed out of the 2017 comprehensive plan, and to encourage the city to adopt a full-fledged bike and pedestrian plan. Historically, we've had maps that show planned routes and planned trails and things like that, but we haven't had a full-fledged plan. We do have a Safe Routes to School plan that focuses on areas around the elementary schools and the other schools in the community, but this one goes into more detail. So just want to walk through things quickly. I don't want to spend a lot of time, but we're happy to answer any questions. Bryce Hembrook, our city planner at the time, was really kind of the lead staff person on this project, and he has since moved on to better things, or different things, not better. So he had a pretty good gig here, so sorry about that. No, he had a good job here. He did a good job, too. Anyways, the purpose of the plan is really to evaluate our existing trails and bicycle facilities. So we did a lot of time collecting data and doing an inventory, proposing new routes and policies. And so there's multiple different recommendations in this plan. It's not all focused on infrastructure or trails. Some of it is policy-related, education, evaluation, things like that. Identify potential funding sources. Obviously, city budgets are tight, and there are different programs from the DOT and other grant programs that having a plan in place really provides, makes us more favorable to those types of programs. The plan would be a guiding document for city staff and elected officials as we go through different projects, whether that's a redevelopment of a street or new construction of a road. It really provides some guidance as to, do we want to put a bike lane here? Do we want to put a trail here or a shared route? So really what, like I said, the early stages, we really wanted to get a lot of public involvement. So we had identified a number of stakeholders. Staff sat around in a group, and we identified different stakeholders that are passionate about biking. And we had a lot of good engagement from the public. We met, included Marshfield Area Friends of the Trail, which is a very active group in town, the Marshfield Clinic Health System Cycling Club, the Marshfield High School Mountain Biking Team, business owners that specialize in bicycles, and other interested citizens. We also held an open house at Wildwood Pavilion this past June. I believe about 25 to 30 people attended. And so we had a lot of good dialogue at that meeting. Also held pop-up workshops along the trails to try to get users people that actually use the facilities to get their feedback and what do they like, what do they dislike, what are some of their concerns about the trails. And then put together a website. Bryce worked with our communications department and developed a website specifically for this plan. And that got a lot of good engagement as well, because there was a survey and an interactive map as part of that. So we've got a lot of feedback throughout this process, which is important. This is bicycle trails, I think, are sometimes overlooked as a high quality amenity. And if you look at other neighboring communities like Stevens Point, they've got the Green Circle Trail, and other communities have some really good biking amenities. Marshfield in the last 20 years has really developed a pretty strong trail system. But what we found out in the public engagement side of things is there's a lack of connectivity, a lack of looping system, and people like to be able to do a loop and be able to know where they're going. And so connectivity and then signage and wayfinding signage is an important aspect of that, and those are areas that we can improve on. So there's six chapters in the plan: the introduction, the planning process, and what we did to develop the recommendations. Existing conditions overview. So this was a good opportunity to inventory the facilities. Bicycle and best pedestrian facilities, so best practices that are looked at throughout the country, and then recommendations. And there are 24 recommendations, which sounds like a lot, and it is. However, it's broken down into different categories, so it's kind of a little bit more palatable. So looking at bicycle facilities, pedestrian facilities, policy recommendations, education and safety, enforcement, evaluation, funding, and wayfinding signage. The other final element is the implementation and funding. So I just have a couple of maps, and I won't go into great detail with them, but these are found in the plan, and you can kind of take a closer look at them. But we have existing and proposed routes, so you can see where those are. There are a lot of routes that are proposed on here, but it gives us options to provide that connectivity and looping. It's not to say that all of these have to be done, but it gives options when we're doing other planning projects or infrastructure projects. These are proposed bike lane priorities. So not only do we identify the routes and locations of them, but also try to prioritize them. In some cases, it was based on projects that we know are coming. We've got a couple, the Adler Road Trail, also Lincoln Avenue, we know is going to be reconstructed. So some of those projects were easier to prioritize than others. And this is a case example, proposed trail priorities. And then proposed shared route priorities. And what a shared route is basically a marker on the pavement or signage that just says, look, this is an identified route, and we are encouraged to be aware of that there's bicyclists using this facility, the road typically, and making sure that people are aware. Now, bicyclists can use any road, but this is probably where there are going to be more heavy traffic for bicyclists. So. Really, that's kind of the presentation that I have for the bicycle pedestrian plan. There is a resolution in your packet. We're just asking the council to consider a formal adoption of it. This is about a 10-year plan, but I imagine that we'll be back revisiting this next year or the year after, just as things come up, as things change. We want to keep our plan up to date. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay, we have a motion. I don't have that screen. So. We have a motion from Mr. Fisher and a second from Mr. Budke. Mr. Fisher, your motion.
Motion to approve.
Okay, is there any comments or questions for Josh? Mr. Wagner.
Josh, I see your priorities listed, Lincoln to Central, Lincoln to Adams. I see them listed in your plan here. You have any idea how much money you're going to be asking for? I mean, how much is it going to cost to do this in the next, let's say, 5 years? You've got a 10-year plan here, but you've got things that you want to do in the next 5 years, 8 things. Palmetto, Ives, Oak, Peach, Becker, Fifth, Lincoln. So how expensive are these things? What are you going to do?
Yeah, and that's a great question. This plan really doesn't lay out an exact budget for these things.
I noticed.
I know you noticed. And the reason for that is it's really going to try to tie in with other funding sources or tie in with existing projects. And so if we're doing a reconstruction, like Lincoln, for example, if we're reconstructing that from Adler to Fifth Street, and there's an opportunity to put the trail in as a cost-saving measure versus a sidewalk, that'll provide some savings there. And if it's part of a grant project to which that one is, those are the opportunities. And again, none of these are saying that we have to do any of these. These are just, these would be part of a budget process or part of a CIP, hopefully part of the CIP first, and then part of a budget process. So, and as you know, there's inflation costs. Things could change very rapidly in the coming years. So, we don't have a specific dollar amount, and we'll look at projects on a case-by-case basis, and those will be reviewed and hopefully approved as the projects get approved.
Any further comments or questions? The motion is to approve Resolution 2021-56. Please vote. And that motion carries unanimously. Item O is a second reading of ordinance number 1452, amending sections 9-36, 9-37, 9-39, 9-40, and 9-41 of the Marshfield Municipal Code pertaining to alcohol beverage operators licenses, presented by Deb Hall. Deb.
Thank you, Council President. This is the second reading, so I will not go over everything again, but basically what this ordinance does is it delegates authority to the city clerk to issue operator licenses instead of taking those applications to the Judiciary and License Committee. The appeal process would still be handled by this committee, and also it removes some duplication of duplicated code, and it also removes all the license fees from this chapter. This is the second reading, and the recommendation is to approve ordinance number 1452.
We have a motion from Mr. Fire to approve, and a second by Mr. Fisher. Is there any comments or questions? Seeing none, please vote. And that motion carries unanimously. Item P is a second reading of ordinance number 1465, amending section 6-31 of the Marshfield Municipal Code concerning outdoor fires. And Chief Owen is taking that from Mr. Fletty today.
Yes. So this is a second reading of ordinance 1465. Again, very similar to Deb. I won't go into great details unless you got questions, but this one cleaned up some language. It added some language into the ordinance. Really, probably the biggest one deals with Park and Rec. We've had a lot of, several instances of people wanting to bring in fire pits into city parks and no way to dispose of ash safely. So that's been addressed in that, as well as some inclusion of the police department. They seem to get there before us, and this gives them some play in there. So with that, recommended action is to approve ordinance 1465.
We have a motion from Mr. Butke to approve, and a second from Mr. Wagner. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion also carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Item Q is a request to authorize execution of an agreement for an option year for shared ride taxi service for calendar year 2022, presented by Steve Bark, City Administrator.
Thank you. This may sound odd, and it seems odd every time I bring it up, but back in 2018, we did an RFP for services, and we went with Running Incorporated from Viroqua for our taxi service for a 5-year period, 2019 to 2023. That's at the high level, but by DOT regulations, we're required to sign and execute an agreement every single year. So in other words, the framework is there for 5 years, but we needed an annual approval to continue with running. So the request is to move forward with an annual agreement with them for calendar year 2022. It came up with the last meeting that there have been a couple of questions, concerns maybe regarding complaints or whatever. I continue to encourage people to forward those to us so we can deal with them. We talk with the provider regularly. We want to make sure people are getting quality service from Marshfield Transit. So with that in mind, the recommendation is to authorize staff to execute the agreement for calendar year 2020 with Running Incorporated for taxi service.
Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Wagner. Your motion?
Motion to approve.
Okay, and a second by Mr. Varsho. And Mr. Wagner, you have a comment.
Yeah, Steve, we used to get a lot more complaints about the taxi service than we do now, but nevertheless, some of the complaints are they need to be handled, they need to be dealt with. We had a system set up in place where whoever took the complaint, whether it was your office, or the police department, or the clerk's office, that basically they would fill out a form, and then there would be disposition of that form. I remember at one time the disposition on a complaint form was 24 hours. Do we still have that?
I'm not aware of it. I know that the complaints are funneled to Amy Krogman, our administrative specialist. She gets in contact immediately or as soon as possible with the provider, either locally or follows up with the office in Viroqua, talking to the manager, and we deal with it. We make sure that that's followed up on, that the concern is addressed, that the person is hears from us and hears from them and what can be done to resolve it. But as far as a form, as far as a 24-hour thing, I've not seen that, but I'll look into it, absolutely.
It's in the city policies and procedures under customer service.
Okay. Yeah, we'll make sure we're doing that then. But I will say that we are in contact with them regularly every time we hear a complaint to make sure that it's addressed properly. But I'll definitely look into that.
Mr. Butke.
Last meeting, I asked for to get the notice out to people at Cedar Rail about the rate increase, and I assume that was done. As part of my district, Cedar Rail is in my district, and I had no complaints.
Thank you. We're still working on that PR. We're looking at bringing that to the council for consideration in the second meeting in October, which is October 26th. So we've still got about 4 weeks. And we've talked about this between Amy, myself, Tom Laux, our communication director, getting the word out to as many places as we can about that increase. Certainly, it may seem small at 15 cents per ride, but if you're a senior or a person with disability, that could be very important. So we're going to contact as many folks as we can reach. Plus, having things inside the cab that they can be given so they see, so the regular riders can see what's being proposed.
Mrs. Spiros.
Thank you, President. You said that you, when you get a complaint, it goes to Amy and then she calls. And then how do you know that they actually did anything about the complaint? Who follows up?
I think Amy generally does, or else.
Does she go there and check to make sure that the situation is remedied, or how is that?
No, it's normally that the local manager or the company out of Viroqua is expected to respond to her and say, here's what happened. We talked to the rider, they didn't call when, at the time that they'd reported, or we apologized to them, and there was a concern because something happened with another person who had to be picked up. Whatever the circumstance is, they work through it and make sure it's addressed, and then we hear back. Again, I don't know the form or the tracking system. That's probably the takeaway from this conversation, to be able to certainly say that the complaint from person A was addressed on this date and closed on that date. But it's making sure that they get back to us to tell us what happened, what transpired to address the complaint.
Okay, so we depend on their response, and that's what we take as a correction.
Well, yeah. I guess if the thought is that we should then follow up with the complainant ourselves to make sure it was satisfied. I think if it's an egregious type situation, we probably would do that. I would certainly want to do that to find out, was this really resolved to your satisfaction? I know that you waited for, excessively long. But in 95% of the circumstances, they follow up, they let us know that they contacted them, apologized, resolved it. Maybe in some cases the rider himself or herself was mistaken as to how we operate and what the timelines are for pickup. But, again, I'm going to say it one more time. I think from what Ed said and what you're saying, Rebecca, I think the takeaway is more formality to tell the world that it happened according to what you'd expect to be a good process.
If I can. Mm-hmm. I think I'm kind of looking more at complaints that have to do with their actual equipment or equipment failures or things like that. So one of the complaints that I received was that a wheelchair should be snapped in, right, so that it can't roll around in the back of the vehicle, and that was not done. When that complaint was forwarded, which I believe I probably forwarded to you, how do we know that they remedied that situation? Did they just simply call you back and say, yeah, we fixed it? Or do we actually go and make sure they fixed it? I'm not trying to
No, I know.
insinuate anything, I'm just,
No.
that's a very big mistake, that's a huge error on their part.
Yeah, the questions that you both are asking are great ones as far as being able to tell the world, we closed the loop. That equipment problem's been remedied, that type of situation where we pick up people from that particular place has been resolved for the future, what entrance. We used to have a problem where people at the clinic, would call for a pickup, and there's a lot of places when you're at the clinic, the medical complex, am I at the East Wing, am I at the hospital, what door do you want me to pick up, and we had some issues from that. Whatever the concern is, we've been able to resolve it, so we shouldn't have that in the future. But again, I think what you're asking for is the formality of being able to keep a log. And maybe Amy does have a log that I haven't looked at, but I will make sure that we start, if we don't have it already, the formality to show that we have addressed the concern as best we can. You're not always going to make the rider happy in those specific complaints, but what you're talking about are broader complaints where there might be a deeper concern between or beyond one passenger. And that's my pledge to you tonight. And I will follow up to let you know that we are doing that if we're not already.
Okay, any further questions or comments? The motion is to authorize staff to execute the required agreement. Please vote. And that motion carries.
Thank you.
Item R is to discuss possible RFP for professional services for labor law, presented by Steve.
Thank you. We seek proposals through an RFP process, request for proposals for various services that we do here, banking, auditing, assessing, all sorts of things of that nature. And there's no specific law that I'm aware of for most of those cases that says you have to do it every 3 years or 5 years or 10 years. It's good business practice to periodically see what services are out there, what price they're asking, and those types of things. So at the end of the last council meeting, Councilmember Fisher suggested that we put on the agenda to talk about a possible RFP for labor law services. Currently, the city uses Von Briesen. We've used them since before I showed up here. And so they've been with the city for many years. We don't have a formal contract with them for ongoing services. When Jen in her capacity or me or one of the chiefs or somebody else needs to talk to someone, we reach out and contact Von Briesen and engage them for their assistance. We did have a contract recently for a specific case that we were dealing with that set forth the expectations and what they were going to do for us. But by and large, it's just that we use their services as needed. So certainly the possibility for an RFP is there. It's been a long time. And if you want to go that direction, we can send out to people who appear to be qualified providers and see what they send us as far as what kind of services they provide. Do they have certain areas of expertise? And what would their billing rates be? So I just present it to you, follow up on Adam's comment the other night for your consideration.
Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Council President. Just a couple of things. One of the reasons I brought this up is and I'm just going to be very candid, my frustration level over the last year with our labor law attorneys was very frustrating for me, and I can only speak for myself. But there were times that I felt we were getting advice that I was not always comfortable with. And again, I can't go into details because of that being in closed session, but it was a frustrating experience for me personally to sit in a room and really question some of the things that I was hearing, and also frustrated at what I felt were some professional mistakes being made in regards to their promises and not delivering in a timely fashion. So I think after experiencing that, that frustration has led me to want to see an RFP. But I also, and I'm glad you said it, I think it is good practice. I agree. I don't think there's legally we have to do it, but I think we should be doing it as much as possible to make sure that we are being fiscally responsible with taxpayer dollars. And since we have seen our legal fees after the last meeting noticeably go up, I think this is one area with our labor law attorneys to see, are they still the most affordable group to be working with, and also just compare and contrast possible services with other firms. So with that said, those are my thoughts, but I am going to make a motion to go out for RFP. I don't have the button yet to do that, Deb.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll continue the discussion with Mr. Wagner.
Thank you. I tend to agree with Mr. Fisher's frustrations. We've had a couple of reasons to have outside counsel. Let's see, that's the nicest way I can put it, in the past 2 years. And basically, we've been disappointed in the ability of those outside counsels to keep us informed, basically pass information directly to us without filtering it, and saying, well, maybe we're not going to show up, but we'll tell the staff to tell you this, which meant if we had any other questions, we had to ask the staff stuff that they knew nothing about. And that wasn't fair. Right now, I see us needing expertise in 2 areas and outside of what we've got with our city attorney. And we need people that specialize perhaps in employee law and possibly with tax law. So I'm looking at the, I don't know if you can combine those in one, or there's going to be 2 separate RFPs or what. I guess I'd ask Mr. Fisher if he had a preference on what specialty he wanted to look at.
Man, all right. Initially, it was only for labor law. But I mean, you make a good point that if that's possible, I would be open to it. But just to clarify, my intent was specifically just labor law.
Steve.
Yeah. Well, our working with Von Briesen has been exclusively, to my understanding, labor law. I don't know that the firm doesn't provide tax law assistance, so we can certainly check on that. And of course, maybe other firms provide both in a way that we could look at that. It may be a little bit of an odd marriage to do the 2 together. I guess I would recommend maybe doing them separate if we're going to do that. But it's your call. I mean, you're obviously the elected officials. You can direct us as you see fit. I would say this, I respect the concerns. In my opinion, Von Briesen has done a good job generally for the city. I've had my, maybe times where I scratch my head at different things as well. But I'm very glad of this body, and I have to say this publicly. This idea came up during a couple of the issues we were going through recently, and I almost implored you not to talk about it then because it would have been difficult to change in mid-course. So I think if you're going to do it, now is the time to talk about doing a request for proposals and looking at other services now that we've kind of cleared those matters and put them behind us, basically. So I will go whichever way. Obviously, you direct either combining those or just doing labor law, which is what I had put on the agenda based upon the comment 2 weeks ago.
And that was going to be my comment, is that on the agenda, we're talking about labor law, and we didn't bring up tax law, so maybe we can.
And that's why I have to be recognized, so I can concur with Mr. Fisher's light. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Anyone else wish to comment? So we have a motion and a second to write an RFP for the professional services for labor law. Please vote. Mr. Fire and Ms. Spiros.
How do you want to vote? Mr. Fire? Yes?
Okay, that motion carries unanimously. Item S, an update and discussion on a request to look into the possible creation of a tourism commission. Again, Mr. Barr.
Thank you. Well, as I think was mentioned earlier when Matt was up here, it was about a year ago, it was in the fall of last year, maybe October, that we talked about the idea that had been brought to light of creating a tourism commission for the city of Marshfield, so that rather than the council making decisions with respect to any allocations and oversight of room tax dollars, it would be handed off to a commission that would be appointed by the council to handle those duties. At that time, the council seemed interested in exploring that. We ultimately agreed on an extension with Visit Marshfield through June 30th of 2022 to allow them to continue the good work that they do as we explored it. And I'm going to apologize openly here because subsequent to that, COVID broke for a second time. We went into closing this facility for a period of weeks. We had the cases we're talking about here with the police chief, mayor, and other things that were going on. And I didn't get back on it. It kind of sat dormant for a while. And now we're trying to pick up the pieces and see where to go here. So I'm kind of looking for the council's direction tonight. I will share my comments sort of dovetailing on what Matt said. There was a meeting, I think maybe 3 weeks ago, where Matt and two of his board members, Al Cheney and Scott Coran, met with Josh and me, talked a little bit about possible opportunities for the EDB and the Visit Marshfield to work together. And they've been very open about the fact that they would like to do that. In fact, they see areas in which they can partner with the city on projects. So to the degree to which that was a concern, as far as that teamwork kind of thing, a closer working relationship, I think there's an opportunity there to make some good inroads. If there were other concerns or other ideas, reasons why you'd like to look at the Tourism Commission, I stand ready to go back to the, 7 or 8 cities that I found that do this across the state and, kick into gear, meeting with those folks, talking with them about their experience, good, bad, and otherwise, what they've learned, what's been beneficial or detrimental about having that model, and sort of pick up the pieces from where we were last fall. And again, I apologize for the dormancy or my delay in this, but I bring it tonight to you looking for your direction on how you want to proceed with this topic.
Mr. Butke.
Thank you. I see no reason to go away from what we're doing now. I think Matt does an excellent job, and all the board members are doing an excellent job. I know we've gotten a lot more things happening in Marshfield, namely sporting events is one of them, but all of the other things that we have. And I just think they're doing a good job. If we need to expand on that to talk with Matt, I think that's fine, but I want to keep it the same.
Mr. Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a chance to talk to Matt and Al about this some time ago. And as you know, I have been probably one of the most outspoken critics of, about this and other things, obviously. But the point is that I was able to tell them what I thought about what they could be doing. I also told them that I thought the creation of a separate tourism council would be redundant. And there would be, basically, it would make some of the groups that receive grants and funds from what is now Visit Marshfield. It's going to take me a while to get used to that, okay? But the people, the agencies that get it would have to go through 2 different steps to get it, or they would go to another commission entirely. I told Matt that was hoping they would align their programs to more closely match our economic development master plan, or comprehensive plan. And he did. He went back and he researched, and he said he found 9 areas of goals and priorities in the economic development plan, which related directly to what they do. He was wrong. There were 12. So anyway, but so they, in my conversations with them, they plan on working hand in hand with us, and I'm looking forward to this new venture that we're taking on. So thank you.
Mr. Fisher.
If I may, I do have some questions for Visit Marshfield. Would that be, if that's allowed, Mr. President? If I could, Matt. I just, and this is a clarification question. I remember, I think about a year ago, this first came up, and I get the sense that obviously Visit Marshfield does not like the idea of a tourism commission. And I've heard words like duplication, things like that. Can you just, I would just appreciate some candor. What is it about the Tourism Commission that, and again, these are my words and maybe you won't agree with it, that seems threatening to your organization? and I'm not for or against, and I just want to clarify that. I just want to know, there seems to be a reaction towards even the concept of looking into it. So I would just like some candor as to what is the issue with it?
Sure, no problem. Really, I read up on the state law and have talked to partners. The commission model was created for areas that have multiple municipalities and multiple cities that kind of work together for tourism. And so Appleton is an example of that, where I believe they have over like maybe 10 different municipalities with different hotels and different room taxes all kind of coming together. And so they created these zone commissions so that like there could be a hotelier from this municipality, from that municipality, from this. And so that was, I think, the intent of the reason that they put that in the law. And so that's where we in Marshfield, we have all of our hotels, same municipality. In Marshfield, they're all overseen. And then also the other reason too, I think, is some areas don't maybe have city representation on their board, where Mike sits on our board, former council member Gary sits on our board, and I work very closely with the city. I think some areas where there's 10 different municipalities trying to work with the commission in different cities, it's harder to work with multiple people than just one. So that's really the direction that I'd heard of why it wouldn't, be necessary for this area. And also the commissions that many of the commissions created, I think some of the examples Steve gave, Lake Geneva, was that there's a 6-member board. I have a 6-member board. There was a representative from the city, representative from the restaurants, representative from the hotels, business owners, and marketing is like the exact same board that we have. And so I guess does that answer your question, Adam?
And one other question is, I know you work very closely with the hotels. What about Airbnbs? Do tourism organizations work closely? Because I'll be honest, with a family of 6, I love Airbnbs. A hotel room with 4 kids from 9 and under is not enjoyable for me. I'm nothing against hotels, but I would have to get the president's suite just to make it enjoyable. So, renting an Airbnb for 4 or 5 days is much more family friendly. And so I'm just wondering, looking into the future, I just can't help but wonder and I'm already seeing it, Airbnbs are becoming more and more popular, but is there going to be a shift in people getting away from hotels? We've already seen the hit, sadly, post-COVID. How are tourism organizations like yours and others across the state, are you able to adapt as even state statute? And forgive me, I haven't looked at the state statutes on tourism. Do they allow for this?
Yeah, it's a good question. The Airbnb thing has kind of been a hot topic over the last few years. I have seen the growth in Marshfield. There's more of them out there than there has been in the last couple of years. I do think a lot of it's, I've talked to some people, like traveling nurses is kind of a hot topic. They want to stay in some place for a week or two. And so I think there is growth in there. I think the reason part of this came up 3 or 4 years ago is they were not paying any room taxes. And so it's kind of like, well, that's not fair to the hotels. The hotels do this and they didn't. And so there was some state legislation that went through that required the Expedias and the Airbnbs and that stuff to do it. I think it got kind of convoluted because they're like, well, we don't know what county or city this is in, who controls it. So that's been a bit of a challenge. But I really think we've had a few of the Airbnbs that have been in our visitor guide. They said, hey, we'd like to buy a small ad. And so, yeah, we really want to support and promote things that are good for the visitor, and especially any of the properties that would serve room taxes to pay to, help bring visitors here. That's good. So I do see that expanding. I think a lot of it's 2 different guests. Like the Hampton Inn, actually, they've been doing better than they expected. So the Hampton Inn has been doing pretty well. And I do think that we were one of the only areas in the state that had a new hotel open even before the pandemic. They weren't planning a lot of hotels. They saw that our visitor growth was going up. The revenues were going up for the hotels. They said, hey, Marshall looks like a good place to build a hotel. And obviously they didn't want to open in the middle of a pandemic. But they've been doing better than they thought. And so it's a positive sign for that.
All right, and if I may just follow up, thank you for answering those questions. Here's my thought. As long as greater collaboration continues to happen between Visit Marshfield and the city, I don't see the need for a commission, and that was my opinion coming in. But if you want to know if there's a takeaway, I want to see greater collaboration. And that doesn't mean I don't think there is good collaboration, but I want to see greater collaboration. So I want to see more communication between the city and Visit Marshfield because we both benefit one another. And so I'd like to see that relationship only strengthen. If I don't see that relationship strengthen, then I might want to look, to be just very candid, I might want to look at alternatives and go, is a commission a viable option in the future? So I'm giving you my cards. That's my takeaway. I want you guys to collaborate even more.
That's great. I appreciate that. Just one comment. I do attend all the Economic Development Board meetings. I've been doing that for the last couple of years. And I work a lot very closely with Josh Miller. I work with Dale. I work with Main Street. I work with Mackey. Work with Steve. So it may not be, I guess maybe it's not being seen as much that we're collaborating, but we are. But I would also like to go to the next level to collaborate more.
One more thing, just to clarify, and I appreciate you saying that because I'm on the Economic Development Board, I see you there. But the council ultimately make the decisions. Okay. And we need the communication to come here so there are not questions in the future of, is this a viable organization? I'm not saying you aren't, I'm just saying the buck does stop at the council. So we need to see that collaboration more clearly, in my opinion, here at this level.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. I know Steve and I have been talking about that. We're having some, looking at doing some strategic planning here. I invite any council members. Also, if you ever want to come to a board meeting, the door is always open.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, in the meeting I had the other day with Al and Matt and Scott, and then I said Josh was there as well, we talked for a good chunk of time about the ways we can partner, but almost probably half the time we talked about how we can be closer together and how we, more intentionality in terms of how we get together. Do we meet periodically? Do we give reports to one another? How do we make sure that we're intentionally trying to stay in contact with one another for the betterment of Marshfield? I think these folks do a great job and have for a long time. I agree with you. We want to make sure that they're pursuing things, that we want to be in touch with them and working together on. But I kind of agree with what Ed said earlier. I think at least at this time, I think we might be trying to solve a problem that we don't have. If it turns out later that we do have a problem, we can always revisit it.
Anything further? Seeing nothing, we'll move on to item T, which is also Mr. Barg, an update on discussion on the 2022 to 2024 strategic plan process.
Okay, can I take from that last conversation that I can work with these folks to try and negotiate moving forward as far as the next steps? Is that reasonable? Okay, yes. You'll see that later, but I just want to make sure I could do that. Thank you, appreciate that. Well, 2 weeks ago I was here on presenting the 2022-2024 strategic plan that staff had put together, and there was a lot of discussion, good discussion. I took a look back at the tape at some of the issues, kind of hit the pause button for a little while. Sometimes it's a good idea to hit the pause button and look at the video and learn from that. And there were some specific things that came up that I need to address, we need to address that were mentioned with respect. I think, Adam, you had a good point about, we have both the police and the public works garage on there, but we can't do both, and it's only a 5-year timeline. Trying to put some of these things together. I know Tom Witzel, you had a couple good comments that I made notes on, but the bigger overarching thing was communicating with the public and giving them a chance to weigh in. So I looked at that. I had a conversation with Tom Lokes, our communications director, talked about how we could best do that. I really don't think at this point with this plan, I don't think town hall or surveys are the way to go. I think the best thing we can do is advertise the plan, put it out there what we're looking at doing, and then seek public comment and feedback in any way we can get, inviting people to call, write, email, text, whatever they do, respond to us via Facebook with their thoughts. Do they like it? Do they not like it? Do they have ideas for items that we don't have on there? Let that bake for a little bit and then come back to you in the second meeting in October. See what that adds up to, address a couple of specific complaints that were mentioned, and see if we can't come up with a plan from that. So that's the extent of my update, truthfully, not a very sophisticated update, But that's what I'd like to do if it works. That'll give time to see what the public thinks about this document, good, bad, or otherwise, what their suggestions might be, and then have a date certain to come back and try and put the pieces together and get something adopted.
Mr. Fisher.
Any questions?
Oh, sorry, Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Council President. I just wanted to say thank you, Steve. I really appreciate the fact that you heard the council out and are going to be responding and also looking at public feedback. So I just want to thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Witzel.
Thank you. It does not appear that any changes were made to the strategic plan as it's presented in our agenda today as opposed to 2 weeks ago.
No, I just put it in there as a reminder of what we looked at before. No, I haven't tried to adjust anything or respond to the specific concerns yet. I will look at that. I just wanted to remind you of what the document looked like 2 weeks ago.
So you will be looking into the things that we suggested along with whatever you get from the public. Thank you very much.
That's the plan.
Anything else for Steve? Thank you.
Thank you.
Item U is a request to appoint Mary Bessler, 818 East 25th Street, to the Fire and Police Commission to complete a vacant term ending in April 2024. We had 9 candidates that expressed an interest in this position. I looked over the candidates' applications. Mary has a background in public safety as well as on the private side, working for the Spirit. She has small business experience as well as a couple of our larger businesses here in town. She's currently a vice president of human resources. I think that she will make an excellent fit for what we're looking for currently on the Police and Fire Commission. And I've known her for more years than either of us care to mention, and I know that she will do a great job. The recommended action is none at this time unless the rules are suspended. Final action will be scheduled for the October 12th meeting. The next Police and Fire Commission meeting is on October 13th. So if you want to give her a head start by voting tonight, otherwise we will put it on the October 12th agenda. Also, Mary is here if you have any questions for her. Mr. Butke.
Thank you. With all the, I'm going to be careful what I say here, but with all the questions we had about the Fire and Police Commission here a while back, I would like for the candidates to come and give us their background. I know we've got an email on it, but to hear things from the people themselves so we can all just see who's out there. I'm not against what Council President is recommending, but I just think, you know, in the past, we've voted down some candidates. I just think it would be good for the public to hear from the candidates too. And so at the next meeting, I would like to invite, if I could, invite the candidates here if they want to come and speak.
I'd like to remind the council that this isn't like the previous decision we made earlier today where the council is presented with a slate of candidates and votes on a ballot. This is by ordinance, a decision of the mayor, which you have entrusted me with that position at this time to make a recommendation for the council basically to vote it up or down. Mr. Wagner.
Yeah, thank you. I partially concur with Mr. Butke. At the very least, I would like that the documents that the people sent to be made available to the council to look at. The other thing is I would like to politely dissent with your assumption that you are the acting mayor. I think we made a decision specifically that we would not have an acting mayor. We would essentially ask the council president to sit in. So I think your assumption may be mistaken. I wouldn't put Bill in the situation of having to rule on that tonight because it's sort of cold turkey. But nevertheless, I'd just like to see the list of candidates brought before the council anyway.
I believe that they were emailed to you earlier today. I believe those candidates, the list of the candidates was emailed to you earlier today. Okay, and maybe I misspoke. I may not be the acting mayor, but I was entrusted to perform the mayor's duties in the absence of a mayor. Mr. Witzel.
Thank you. We did receive an email. It came into my inbox this morning at 11:21 a.m. A little bit of an odd topic or subject. It said message from KM_C458, and it came from Amy Krogman, for those of you that are trying to find that email. So 11:21 a.m. today, message from KM_C458. Having been in the chair that Mr. Paschal is in, and having had to make a very difficult decision earlier this year, I appreciate the work that he's put in on this. I'm glad that we did receive the copies of what was submitted. I assumed there was more than just one, so it was nice to see those. It was also nice to see that so many people showed interest, where when I was doing this a few months ago, it was a pretty small group of people that showed interest. So anyway, I don't really have an issue with what's transpiring, and I guess I would go along with what our council president has recommended.
Ms. Spiros.
So I'm just going to bring a couple of things up. Yes, the email came at 11:30 today. However, some of us work during the day, or we don't check our emails at 11:30. Maybe we're too busy going through 212 pages of a packet instead. I'm just pointing that out, that we didn't really have sufficient time to look at these. Secondly, although the suggested appointment will come from the council president, it is still the duty of this council to approve that appointment. And so I feel like it's not an unreasonable request to hear from other candidates, just in case there are people who disagree with your choice. And I don't know that to be the fact. I haven't had an opportunity. I glanced at the candidate stuff for 5 minutes before the meeting started. So, I just think that's just doing due diligence, allowing people to look through it.
Mr. Witzel.
Thank you. I think to follow up, that's part of the reason why we're getting that information today, and not specifically tasked with making that final decision for 2 weeks. So I do agree, we do need to have time, and it does drive me crazy when I get emails the day of a meeting, and I also can't review things. So I appreciate getting those things more quickly, but I think at this point, we do have 2 weeks to maybe go through and look at and make some decisions.
Ms. Spiros.
I'm really not trying to be cantankerous here, but maybe I am being a little bit. But I had to ask for those emails. Okay, I had to send an email off and ask to see the rest of the candidates. It wasn't included in the packet. So I'm just saying, had I not asked, I'm not sure that it would have been sent.
Any further discussion? Oh, Mr. Wagner.
Yeah, thank you. I found the email. I had checked my email a lot today, but I didn't get this one. I don't know why. Just saw it for the first time.
Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Council President. Without objection from you or the council, since we have the person here that you wish to appoint, would she be willing to come up and at the very least introduce herself and explain more about why she's interested beyond just what she wrote? Is there any objection to that?
No. Mary?
So my name is Mary Bessler. I live at 818 East 25th Street in Marshfield. I've been a resident of Marshfield for around 35 years in many capacities. Most recently, I'm the Vice President of Human Resources for Nelson Jameson Incorporated. So I do have some experience on the labor law topic. as well as employee engagement and many other things. I do believe that my experience on that side of things could be beneficial to anything going on right now, quite frankly, in the society that we live in and how we interact with individuals. My past, I was a co-owner of Creative Paint and Decorating with my husband, Todd, who passed away in 2018. And so I do have the small business perspective as well. Prior to my career in HR, which I eventually ended up in HR through St. Joseph's Hospital. But when I first moved to Marshfield, I came from a law enforcement family. My dad actually retired as a chief of police in Idaho. That's actually where I grew up, was in Idaho. And I followed law enforcement and EMS my whole entire life. It's been just a part of my DNA. That resulted in my interest. You know, I never really had the desire to be a police officer. No offense. To do that. You're very smart. Yeah. But I do very much respect the profession of firefighters and police officers. They do a lot for the community and more than I think meets the eye of individuals. But with my background in the police and the growing up, I don't want to get ahead of myself. I chose to apply for the city of Marshfield as a dispatcher back in the day when it was located in the city of Marshfield, which, by the way, I still believe it was a mistake to move it. But that's my personal opinion that I'll just share. So that I was a dispatcher. I think I was highly respected by some of the police officers in town. That's kind of where Nick and I go way back. I knew him from back in those days. And I was recruited away from the city of Marshfield by Dr. Stephen Mickle with the St. Joseph's Hospital. He was also a volunteer firefighter for Macmillan. And his words was he wanted someone that knew what they were doing and someone that could interact. And they recruited me to start up the Communication Center for Spirit of Marshfield. And so I was the person behind the scenes in getting that helicopter up off the ground and tracking it throughout the state and doing what it needed to do. So I stayed in the EMS career as a dispatcher supervisor for that facility. Once, they say dispatcher burnout is 6 years. I felt pretty good that I lasted like 12. So I decided at that point in time that it was time to make a change. And I enjoyed what I was doing from a supervisory standpoint, so I made a career change to human resources for St. Joseph's Hospital. And I worked for them for quite some time. And then I moved on to some other organizations, both out of town and in town, and landed with Nelson Jameson, and that's where I stand today. The reason for my interest in the Police and Fire Commission is, someone was up here earlier and made some comments in regards to, they were not politically motivated. You know what? Neither am I. I'm not politically motivated, but if you're sitting back and you're watching something and seeing something that goes on in a community that you love, and you wish there could be change, but you're not willing to stand up and help make that change, then there's a problem. I'm willing to stand up and help make that change. But I can tell you that one of my biggest goals is that I love this city, but more importantly, I respect the police and fire. The police and fire need to be able to go out on the streets, protect you and I and our families. They need to be worrying about doing their job. They need to have the right equipment, the right safety tools, and everything they need. They do not need to be worrying about political nightmares and political disasters that are going on in a city. And so my goal is to make a change, to make it respected, to make that police and fire group work to do what is right and to help these guys do their job. That's it. That's what I got. Any questions?
Thank you. Okay, we'll bring that back at the October 12th meeting for decision. Item V is to adjourn to closed session under Wisconsin statutes, chapter 19-85, paragraph 1E, deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons are involved, specifically a possible waiver for city's acceptance of donated property, possible development agreement for Daniels Addition, and a request to purchase residential lot in Daniels Addition. Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Witzel and a second from Mr. Wagner to go into closed session. Please vote. Mr. Fire, yes. And we're in closed session.
You get older, you can't see. You know this. I do. You hear me talking, Tom. I do. All right.
Okay, Mr. Fisher indicates he wants to make the motion that Deb is going to read.
Okay, this motion is to approve the acceptance of the sculpture, its location near the entrance of Weber Park, and agree to the indemnification agreement. Say that twice.
And we have a second from Ms. Spiros. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Come on, Mr. Britt.
Oh, and that passes unanimously?
You're being honest.
And then I have a motion from Mr. Witzel, which Ms. Hall will also read.
This motion is to approve the development agreement template and direct staff to execute agreements prior to the sale of lots in the city subdivision.
And Mr. Varsho seconds that. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. And that motion carries by a majority. I'll entertain I better follow the agenda here. Suggested items for future agendas? Seeing none, motion to adjourn by Mr. Witzel, second by Mr. Rosendich. Please vote. We're adjourned.